Hello.
Okay, Mahin and Germany, you may begin. Okay.
Yes, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
If
Yes,
you're
sir. Good to go.
inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants from different time zones across the globe. The School of Business and Law, Navratna University, cordially welcomes you to the inaugural ceremony of the International E-Conference or Emerging Trends in International Law. I'm your host, Mahin, along with my co-host, Gemini. As the theme of the present conference is on the emerging trends in international law, we aim to discuss and address the major issues confronting international policymakers, ranging from environmental concerns to a massive humanitarian crisis, global pandemic to hostile governments, unilateral declaration of independence to the controversy on self-determination, refugee crisis to questions on nationality, to name a few. The event will be covered under various sub-themes, giving a vivid idea and an innovative response to the problems in international law. We would like to seek a prior permission of all the dignitaries to start the inauguration ceremony of the conference. On behalf of everyone, Bhatia sir, could you please permit us to start the session?
Yeah. Please, mine. Go ahead.
Is a symbol of brightness and prosperity. As sunlight expels the darkness of mind, similarly, blessings bring in our life prosperity and happiness. To make this event a blessed one, invoke Goddess Saraswati by kindling the lamp of knowledge and wisdom. For seeking the choicest blessings for the same, I invite all the dignitaries for the same.
क्या ऑडियो नहीं
Now, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce the Associate Dean of the School of Business and Law, Dr. Hitesh Bhatia. Dr. Hitesh Bhatia has completed his PhD in Business Economics. His thesis is titled Social Security in India with reference to fiscal sustainability and aging, which focused on several important issues from the field of public finance and demography. He has over 18 years of experience in teaching and academic coordination. Also, Dr. Hitesh Bhatia has successfully executed several tasks, including designing and launching various academic programs like BPA, BPLLP, BCom, and MBA. He has directed several regional and national level seminars, workshops, and conferences. In the past, he has been associated as an expert faculty with several institutions. Sir, I would like to invite you to share a few words.
Thank you, Mahin. So first of all, very warm welcome to all the delegates from across the globe, especially Professor George and Professor Manoj Sinha Saab. Namaskar, sir. Or this is a virtual medium, and that gives us an opportunity also to host delegates from across the globe. I congratulate Dr. Sujata Patil and the team of the law faculties over here to have taken this initiative and organized this conference on a very relevant topic today, that is international law. I believe that this generation, we are living in a very complex times. We are living in a time where the globalization and protectionism is existing collectively. You can see that how economies on some issues become globalized and suddenly on certain issues become very protectionist. I think the instance that Professor George was discussing about the extradition, it shows that how economies are also very protective. Don't want others to penetrate very easily, right? And the trade issues and the economic issues that are between the economies today, and also the fights which are for the survival, the fights which are for the resources, are making all these concepts very, very pertinent and very interesting to discuss and deliberate about. So whether it is the humanitarian crisis, or whether it is the crisis related to the refugee, it is a crisis related to the sharing of resources, the oil crisis, for example. So all these things have to do a lot with the socio-economic policies that the economies are adopting today. And as I told, that these economies themselves are in a very state of confusion, what I believe. So there is no single track that the countries are following, unlike 10, 20 years ago, when it was very clear that there was a specific ideologies that the economies were following. So these complex matters make it very interesting to discuss and deliberate further about the international laws. Of course, you are the law experts and legal experts in these areas, and I look forward to a lot of interesting discussions and deliberations in this workshop and in this conference today. So once again, on behalf of Navratna University, I welcome you all to this virtual conference, and I look forward to a very intellectual and enriching discussions, specifically for students and research scholars who are participating throughout the globe. It would be an opportunity for you all to listen to these experts while they share their experiences. So this is an opportunity for everyone of us over here. So thank you so much, and once again congratulate to the law department for hosting this conference, and all the best.
Thank you, sir. I request sir to release the book abstract for the conference today. Sir, please.
Yes, I think we all, Professor George, Professor Sinha, along with them, we are very proud to release the book of abstract over here, which comprises of a lot of intellectual perspectives that are being brought up by the participants over here. So it's a good compilation. So please release the book of abstract.
Thank you, sir, and all the dignitaries. I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce the Principal of Law, School of Business and Law, Dr. Sujata Patil. Her journey in academics started in 2005. She worked in 3 reputed institutions in Bangalore. Holding faculty positions in different institutions, she taught subjects like company law, contract law, constitutional law, etc. She was a member of governing council and chairperson and member of different committees. Dr. Patil has published extensively in peer-reviewed impact factor journal of national and international repute. Ma'am has been a recipient of International Award as Distinguished Women Administrator, VIWA 2016, from Venus International Foundation, Chennai. She has also been a recipient of award as Best Young Teacher 2016 from Grab's Educational Charitable Trust, Chennai. I invite you, ma'am, to share a few words.
Thank you, Gemini. I hope I am audible. Yes. Yeah. Very good morning to one and all. On behalf of School of Business and Law, I take this opportunity. I'm very much delighted to extend a warm welcome for today's dignitaries who are going to our today's chief guest for the today's event. I extend my warm welcome to Dr. Manoj Sinha, Director of Indian Law Institute, New Delhi, and Professor George from McKinney School of Law, uh, Indiana University, USA, and Professor Pratyush Shankar, officiating provost from Navrachna University, Dr. Sandeep Vasant, Registrar of Navrachna University, Dr. Hitesh Bhatia, Associate Dean of School of Business and Law, and also the professors who are going to chair the today's session, technical session. We have invited a couple of professors from outside, and also internally we have few professors who are going to chair the session. And also the most important, all the participants who have shared their interest and they are going to be a part of today's the entire journey. And all my faculty colleagues, students, welcome you all. Well, coming to the theme of the today's event, why do we choose emerging trend in international law? As we all know, if you look at our Indian economy, if we way back prior to industrial revolution, the source of income of our Indian economy, it is completely we are dependent on agriculture. And gradually we just moved from agricultural era to industrial era. And from industrial era, now today we are into a technological era. And we can see the change, the shift from agriculture, from industry, and from industry to technological era, which in turn we can notice a lot of commercial transactions that we are doing. It is expanded our business activities. And presently, whatever the business that we are doing, it is not just restricted to a domestic level. We have crossed the border and we are doing now at the international level. And when we are doing our activities at the international level, I feel it is a need of the hour to understand how the legal, I mean, from the legal point of view, the application of law, the various laws that are applicable to regulate our commercial activities at the international level. This is one part. And if we look at the present, as we all noticed and we all faced this COVID-19, it is a globally, it's a very, very challenging, and we all encountered with that. And if you look at from pandemic point of view also, we noticed a lot of amendments, lot of changes in our existing legal system. We come across lot of amendments. If you take, for example, insolvency law, labor law, taxation, if I'm not wrong, 2020, if I'm not wrong, FDI, I think, foreign direct investment, there is an amendment, foreign trade policy, a lot of changes that we noticed. Not only whatever the amendments, whatever the changes that we noticed after the pandemic, it is not only from, I'm not talking from a domestic point of view, even at the international level also, we noticed a lot of changes. And in addition to that, one thing, it is a known fact, and we cannot deny that, not even a single country in our, globally, I can say that it is blessed with all the resource. Each and every country is dependent on each other. Few countries are blessed technologically, they are sound enough. Few countries are good at financially. Few countries are good at manpower. Few countries are good at blessed with the natural resource. This dependency, interdependent, we are dependent on each state. And when we are dependent on each state, to regulate, to maintain a peaceful environment, we do have the body. We all know that is called an organization, WTO. World Trade Organization is regulating and it is implementing, it is coming up with a common framework, and it is implementing, and being all the rest of the other states who are the member, who are the signatories to WTO, we are bound to follow that. And there it comes a lot of challenges that we are facing. And we always, I think, WTO is always subjected to the controversy. WTO is always subjected to the, I can say, debatable issue, wherein we always say that WTO is biased toward the developing and the underdeveloped countries, and it is favorable to the developed countries. But I can say it is a myth of the people, wherein balancing the situation, taking the things forward, it is not as an easy task. And this is how today, understanding on all these aspects, okay, see, understanding the law only, not only from the commercial point of view, I'm not put forth thing, understanding an international law from environmental perspective, from refugee, and from international law pertaining to the cyberspace, international law pertaining to the insolvency law, international law pertaining to the various aspects. I think today we are going to have a discussion. So in this context, we thought, let us put forth our discussion pertaining to the international law, and wherein it gets an opportunity to all the participants to put forth their views on the various facets of international law. And with this, I feel that, and at the same time, I say that this platform today, it is going to be a very much beneficial for all the participants and also audience who are going to take part. They can gain a lot of knowledge. And I think I wish all the best for all the participants and also the organizer of today's event. All the best, all the success for the entire day. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Sujata ma'am, for your enlightening words. With this opportunity, I would like to request Sujata ma'am to release the next iteration of our legal newsletter, Inaugural.
Okay. Yeah, we all togetherly we can. Okay, proceed.
Moving on, I'm privileged to have been given this opportunity of introducing our distinguished guest, Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha. Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha is the director of Indian Law Institute. He did his doctorate in international law. His areas of specialization include human rights, constitutional law, international humanitarian law, international refugee law, etc. He has published extensively in the field of international law, international relations, constitutional law, international human rights, and humanitarian and refugee laws in reputed national and international law journals. He also serves as a member of editorial boards of various reputed national and international journals. He regularly delivers lectures at various educational and training institutes throughout India and abroad. He has authored, edited, and co-edited over 17 books. On behalf of School of Business and Law, Navarash University, I would like to thank him for providing his gracious presence for joining us today to enhance our joy, and I would like to invite sir to share his words of wisdom with us.
All right. Thank you very much, respected Professor Hitesh Bhatia ji, Associate Professor and Associate Dean of the Nodachna University, Professor Sujata Patil, Associate Professor and Principal of Law, Nabeen Sinha, who asked me to come here, and of course, in a few minutes, we have good interaction with the Professor George E. Edwards, Professor of Law, Indiana University, McKinney School of Law. It's a great honor for me to be here part of this exercise or in the inaugural function of the very important theme, emerging trends in international law. When we talk about the couple of words I explored in the morning, emerging trends, contemporary challenges, issues and challenges, problem and issues. And if you explore these terms in the beginning of the 20th centuries and beginning of the 21st centuries, the challenges, contemporary issues remain same. When ILO was established, if you look why ILO was established in 1919, and today when you look into the labor law, so the issues which they have identified, it remains same till date. That is the major problem. So emerging It's a continuous, it remains like some way international community, some way local community have failed. So enforcement has been a big challenge for the human rights when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. And that is the reason it has been as a soft law, like not legally binding. But if you ask some scholar of human rights today, he will say ki implementation is a problem. Where is implementation? Where is the, so these are the issues always like, burning. It's a contemporary and it continues. It's a linkage. It never dissolves. And some way we have to look into. If I take you to the, when emerging trends, if I start with the what British jurist, who said about the international law in the Thomas Holland, he said, he was there 1835 to 1926, and he said international law is the vanishing point of jurisprudence. What he said in the much in the early 20th century, many scholars, they doubt about the efficacy or effectiveness of the international law in today's context also. What Austin has also described international law as a positive international morality. So he also said it's not an effective law, it's a problem there. And he says it's a consisting of opinions and sentiments current among nations generally. So he has also looked at it in a very different way. But as Professor Bhatia and Professor Patil has emphasized, there are certain developments which took place in the 20th centuries, which end of the 20th century, which has almost started witnessing a sea change in the perception or compliance of the international law, particularly when it comes to the trade-related aspects or trade-related law. If we are talking about IPR, we did not discuss much in the 60s, 70s, or 80s about the IPR, copyright, trademark. It was more a subject of a lawyer who used to go for the registration of trademark, who was going for the registration of the patent. It was a subject to confine. It was never academic subject in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. But 90s, after TRIPS agreement, WTO, a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed. Here also, I would like to add, which for our good friend George Edwards. So we teach, university system also looked into the importance of international law, in particularly in the 20th centuries and 21st centuries. And what we have done in the university system, we have almost everywhere international law as a paper. In the 2013, we started 1 year LLM. So in India, first time in 2013, we started 1 year LLM. And a paper has been coined, Law and Justice in Globalizing World. Law and Justice in a Globalizing World, which we have misunderstood, interpreted, reinterpreted in a different way. Some interpreted in the Constitution, some jurisprudence, something. But I had an opportunity to persons who were part of that exercise. So intent of the syllabus was, in drafting of the syllabus was, how international law, so in the top of international law, is impacting domestic law. That was the trend. That was the idea in the paper, in the Law and Justice in Globalizing World, which we teach here on the more on the cosmopolitanism. And why I'm bringing here cosmopolitanism, I'm Professor Edwards, and you all are familiar. When we look into this, so justice, so entire things in the justice. So whether there is a possibility of global justice, whether we can think about the integration of the nation states in one, is there possibilities? And that has evolved or developed two sets of the scholars, particularly in the political science, even in law and even the other philosophy, cosmopolitanism and communitarianism. Cosmopolitans who believes in the global system, who believes in the global justice, and who believes that there is a responsibility. What are the major challenges today? It's not challenge. Major challenge is the poverty. Is the global poverty is the major issue for everyone, whether it's a rich or poor nation. That is there. I'll come. So when we talk about the, so I just take 1 or 2 minutes on a eminent scholar of the cosmopolitan believers, Thomas Pock, had said about the international, cosmopolitanism. What he spoke about, Thomas Pock emphasized that obligation of justice is applicable to the world stage. So he differed from John Rawls. John Rawls says, theory of justice is justice is intertwined with the territorial boundaries. But he say, it's applicable. Global justice is there because we share a global basic structure. He said, global basic structure. We share a global basic structure which comprises of a set of economic and political institutions, and that various bodies of subsidiaries of the United Nations, and that has profound and ensuring effect at the distributions of the burdens and the benefits among peoples and individuals around the world. So if something we see an emerging, like an area which is the cosmopolitan who argued there. Let me come to the points. So emerging, when I have to look into the emerging, today, even we as a scholar, when I go for teaching somewhere something, I go I pray to God, and next thing I go to the Google also to search what is the scholars. I say after God, I go to Google God and find out what Google is saying. So I'll say that in 1980, also somebody is emerging trend. So I try to seek, contemporary literature I have to find, which has been something on the 20. And I'm very happy that in your, conference brochure, which you have just circulated quickly, I have seen there are a lot of papers are very important. And one paper which is related with the ecocide. There's one paper, one girl or boy, whosoever that types of ecocide has developed in the 21st June 2021. It's only one emerging trend. So I think the word has catched in within 1 year in Indian scholarship. Even it took me for 6 months to find out ecocide. But ecocide was a Philipson in the June. Some of the environmental law scholars, they thought about ecocide and it can be brought. So we'll discuss a little bit later. So that is the contour. That is the emerging trend. Emerging trend, environment was always there. Trade was always there. So what I have 6-7 issues I have identified in the current and contemporary. So we discussed in the morning with George and me, extradition, deportation, refugee. These are from World War after the end of the Second World, before Second World War also, it was the issue, and then now it has there. So it's not very contemporary, but it's very relevant. It affects the relationship between the nation states, no doubt about that. Extradition and cases are evolving day to day. So first, I feel we are living in a situation which we have witnessed pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic. So we are going through a 3-phase. There we have, so pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, no mask, no social, shaking hand, living peacefully, enjoying everything. But pre-pandemic is no. So during pandemic, we have got something different, which we never thought we are here, which has plus, which has minuses. We have never thought the international health regulations of the World Health Organization. The scholars hardly go, only the medical professors. So we have gone to the international health regulations to find out what pandemic means. What is the definition for pandemic, and what it means public health issue, public emergency, or something is there that I'm just missing that word. Public emergency of international health concern, public health emergency of international concern, and then their obligation and rule of the WHO. So we started looking in the documents of the WHO, why WHO not had, what are the obligation of China. So a lot of issues we discussed. So this become very important issue, and guidelines, WHO guidelines become very important in that particular. So health become a very important contemporary subject, and there it takes us quickly to the international cooperation also. So here, this during pandemic, we have also realized you can't find a solution if you see that you isolate yourself. If United States believe it can protect every citizens of the United States by vaccinating, or same applies to India, it may not happen. We have to vaccinate with the principle of citizen of the world. We have to vaccinate people from Ghana, we have to vaccinate Nigeria, Niger, Sierra Leone, Somalia. We have to vaccinate from that side, from Bangladesh, from the Pacific Island. So each unless we, so vaccine nationalism will not work, I believe, and so it's a global responsibility. It's a global responsibility. Don't feel happy that you have developed vaccine. You have a developed vaccine. You have to administer the vaccine, because you have a capability, you have a competence, you have resources, but that resources has to be shared by each, rich and poor. So equality has to be applied in this life. So health issues in there. So that is very important aspect in the international cooperation. Even Article 1, paragraph 3 of the United Nations talks about international cooperation in resolving international problems related to economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character. So there is an international cooperation. There is obligation on the member states of the United States to cooperate under the international cooperation. So vaccination. So this is the emerging, I think, health issues. So post-pandemic, during pandemic and post-pandemic, we all have to work together. This is the first major emerging issues I have thought about. The second, which is also started on the 14th August or 15th August, when India was celebrating its independence, and on the neighboring countries is losing independence. That is the independence of human rights, enjoyment of the human rights of the women and children, and good governance, because Taliban has come into the power on the same time when we were celebrating independence. And then 20 years independence has gone in one stroke because of the United States decided to withdraw the forces. And then we have seen how people were desperately in the, trying to go out, and a lot of changes, but still things are very there. So human rights, then the concern is that this is the emerging, how a nation, how people have been treated, how the response of the international community. You have laid down series of articles under the charter, you have humanitarian intervention, you have various principles, but we see that everybody is silent. United Nations could not utter a single word, that or some kind of resolution, 1 or 2 resolution they adopted, but ground realities remain same. Afghanistani people are, if this anybody it reminds me so dialogue of Sole, गब्बर से अगर तुम्हें कोई बचा सकता है तो वो खुद गब्बर, तो वही तालिबान से खुद बचा. If you can save somebody from Taliban, it's only Taliban. So same thing, they say, if you want to, if your rights are protected, we'll protect nobody else. And that principle, some way we see when it comes to the gross violation of human rights, we notice the response of the some way very slow of the international community, international organization, and primarily the UN has a major role in Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Other day I had an opportunity where we had interaction with the acting High Commissioner for Human Rights, who was there in 2003, 2004, from a gentleman from Guyana, Professor Bertrand Ramcharan. So I asked him the question, why these are the things. So I learned, he said, we try the approach of the United States. So this is an approach of the United Nations. It's not that they are not concerned. So so in the entire idea which I carry, that has been settled by the understanding their point of view. They said we try to see that the implementation or respect of human rights will be ensured by the authorities, the local authority. So what we are trying now, Taliban has come, we are not going in the question of legitimacy or illegitimacy or the power of the government. We look into more onto the dialogue. So he said we are engaged, and I have seen also in the TV, we have seen that continuous dialogue is going. So if there is a ground related situation in Afghanistan is little bit better compared to the earlier one, it's because of the tremendous pressure of the subtle manner international organization and UN bodies are working with the negotiating dialogue. So dialogue has become very important, which takes us to the specific settlement of international disputes in the chapter 6. So chapter 6 is very important. I think dialogue, mediation, arbitration, conciliation, negotiation, diplomatic channel, that is very important, where you have a scope. If a dialogue is resorted, and which is happening, I believe, in case of the Afghanistan also is there. And that is also happening in the case of Russia and Ukraine. Russia, every time Macron has flown, then German Chancellor is going to, Scholz is going to talk to there. So they all are trying to de-escalate the forces, demilitarization. So even Russia, we are almost on the verge of the Third World War. But the negotiation has become very important tool in the 21st century, in particular last 1 year too, where dialogue is playing very important. I believe that has to be a strong tool which has to be used, not for the enforcement, using force against any state. So if dialogue can be established, there is a possibility, I believe, that is very important, which we are witnessing in the Afghanistan case and also in the Russian and also Ukraine case, and that may lead to the demilitarization that may solve the problem is there. Then Then, like, the another important issues which we have discussed, indifferent towards the respect of or protection of the refugee rights, migrant rights, internally displaced persons. A large number of conflicts are taking place worldwide. So we see some way something is missing, where like the states have become more cautious about guarding their borders. So they don't allow, they are party of the various international instruments, deals with the refugees, but when it comes to the application, we find they operate entirely contrary to the objectives of those convention, and they say no refugees. There are a lot of restrictions have been imposed, and that is creating, that is the challenge, like internally to treatment to the internally displaced person, to child protection of migrants and refugees. That is the also big continuous challenge. It was always there when 1951 convention was established, but it's today in there. Then also the climate change and human rights, which is equally important development. And we have seen that each year, like conference of parties under the United Nations Framework Convention on Environment, they meet once in a year to discuss about how to restrict the global global temperature to 1.5. That is the goal which we have said. Zero emission, which we have said. Number of goals are there, but things are remain more or less is there. Then another is in the climate change and human rights, that word which I have mentioned, that ecocide is, that is like that is like pressure. Ecocide should be included under the Rome Statute. So because it talks about the protection of serious, so protection of for serious environmental harm is a global concern. Serious international environmental harm is a serious concern, and this concept, so this is contemporary, which on the 24th June 2021, an international panel of legal experts adopted a legal definition of ecocide, proposed to be added as a fifth crime. So there are 4 crimes under the International Criminal Code. The 5th crime under the statute is there. So these are the issues, so environment issues there, human rights issues is there, refugee issues are there, and of course protection of human rights and health issues. I just try to filter out what are the issues, not to repeat the issues which are established and we keep on saying this is there. So we see these are the contemporary issues emerging is there. So so with this I conclude, and I also request, I may take I'll stay for 2-3 minutes because I have to go for 10:30. So some way I have exceeded and my time also. I apologize for that. And Edward, I may attend for 2-3 minutes, but kindly allow me to leave at 10:30 because I have to attend the program. But you continue, and I'll try to see and hear your recorded message, and we'll be in touch. I'll write to you soon. So thank you.
Yes, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank
It'd be great to be in contact.
Thank you, George. Nice meeting to you. Thank you, Dr. Sujata Patilji, Dr. Hitesh Bhai. Thank you very much, and all of you for inviting me and giving me a wonderful chance to discuss with you, and also to find a good friend like George. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manoj Sinha sir. On behalf of School of Business, and we extend our heartfelt thank you to you. And really, it was an insightful talk what you shared with us. And now let us start with the next session. Okay.
Thank you, sir, on especially sharing the characteristics of cosmopolitanism and giving us insights about the various contemporary challenges in the process of implementing the human rights and the importance of international law in today's time. I thank sir who graced us with his presence and guidance, and for sharing with us your words of wisdom. I am honored and pleased to have been given this opportunity of introducing our next distinguished guest, Professor George E. Edward. Sir is a CM grade professor of law at Indiana University, Robert H. McKinney School of Law. He is also faculty director of the school's program in international human rights law, was awarded special consultative status with an accreditation to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. He has received numerous teaching, research, and civic engagement awards. He teaches international human rights law, international legal transactions, public international law, and the international criminal law. He received his Juris Doctor degree from the Harvard Law School. Professor Edwards co-edited volumes 1 to 5 of Hong Kong Public Law Reports and is widely published internationally in international human rights law. Sir lectured, delivered papers, participated at seminars, represented or advised human rights groups across many countries. His list of awards and accomplishments is endless. It is an honor to have with us such an eminent personality on the occasion of inauguration. On behalf of School of Business and Law, I thank him for providing his gracious presence for joining us today to enhance our joy, and I would like to invite Sir to share his word of wisdom with us. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely excited to be here. I'm thrilled that I had the opportunity to witness the parade of papers that was displayed a few moments ago. That has increased my excitement level 1,000-fold. Of course, I'm very aware of the topics of the emerging trends in international law seminar. And in fact, my comments will focus principally on those, but I didn't have a chance to see the actual papers, but I saw the abstracts and I'm excited about that. And that's offered a little bit of food for me to share with you as I share my screen with you in just a moment or two. But thank you very much for having me. Thank you for those who've come before me and those who will come after. So I will share my screen. So please just tell me if you're able to see it. And oops. Are you able to see this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No or yes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So, so trends and emerging trends. I'm going to focus on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how they might be used to help kind of serve as a thread to needle between and among the 10 different emerging themes of the seminar that I'm so excited about to actually see in real life the substance of what's going to be shared between and among everyone during the course of the day. And so my very brief PowerPoint has an introduction. I make 5 points. One just focuses on what I identified what you identified as the themes. I'm going to make a couple of comments about those, and then how those themes trigger kind of sources of international law and other aspects of international law that I think those of us who have been working in the international law field for quite a while take for granted, but maybe for those of us who have had less exposure to international law, we're neophytes, you might find it interesting to learn about some of these fundamental building blocks and how they relate to what it is that is going to be at the heart of the discussions this weekend. And then I'm going to single out actors, ACTORS, and the roles that they play in international law at different levels. And then, of course, I'll introduce the 17 the Sustainable Development Goals, and then ask you, this is my call to action, and that I've seen the abstracts flash across the screen. I know some of the subject areas now that you're going to be working in. I'm going to ask you to think about whether any, all, most, some of the strategic development goals relate to your topic, and to the extent that you have not incorporated references to the SDGs in your papers, maybe consider referencing them or some of the literature, some of the facts on the ground related to SDGs as part of kind of a mainstreaming of SDGs, not only within the UN system, but in academia, in the judiciary, and elsewhere. And then I will conclude. So the themes, very exciting. They're all distinct and discrete, but so interrelated. And I heard that when Dr. Sinha and Dr. Patil were talking about kind of various aspects of international law, in particular, Dr. Patil, who kind of mentioned some of the themes and how some are kind of private, some are public, and some are human rights and refugees. I was thinking about how all of these are related to each other. Whether you're an academic, a judicial officer, a researcher, a practitioner, a student of law, a student of political science, or any other stakeholder group, and you have identified a theme, think about how it relates to the other themes. Okay, so the themes, just of course, everyone's familiar with them. And the challenges, we heard the list of challenges that Dr. Sinha shared with us. And if we I guess if we had a top 10 list, if each one of us had a top 10 list of challenges, I think we'd find a lot of commonalities on that list, like climate change and lack of dialogue and lack of international cooperation. And I've mentioned a couple of those here as well. But again, the themes I won't just to tell you how war relates to peace and humanitarian crises, how war or armed conflict triggers humanitarian crises, that triggers refugees, and how human rights are kind of streamed throughout all of these discussions. We did hear already about self-determination and declarations of independence, which is linked to number 8 below, international recognition. Environment, we've heard about a lot about already, but the environment kind of leads to humanitarian crises, or is in fact a humanitarian crisis in some ways. And with refugees and whether they are kind of economic, they're motivated by economics or motivated by some armed conflicts that's triggered by quests for exercise over natural resources. And then of course global terrorism. We need not have lengthy discussions about the impact of that on the world, because we all know. And then of course commercial issues. We heard reference to the WTO. Sure, it's a public international intergovernmental organization, but there are real companies and that are doing business that engage in the actual trade, and those companies have humans who work for them who might be subjected to unfair labor practices, or maltreatment, deprivation of a wide number of economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights. So we can't just speak of any of these in a silo, because they all relate to each other. So back to the fundamentals very, very quickly, particularly for those of us who might be relatively new to international law. We have the themes they bring to my mind: sources of international law. So what source of international law is going to govern each and every one of these theme areas? So we have, and I just chose the U.S. just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. In many countries, there's a constitution that serves as a source of law. There are statutes, whether it's Congress or Parliament, and executive orders or royal orders from the king, local ordinances, etc. But in the international arena, our traditional sources of law are treaties, and we've heard references already. Dr. Sinha mentioned the framework agreement on climate change. So treaties and customary international law principles and general principles. So in each of the papers, there certainly are references to sources of international law, some treaties that are binding on states that you want them to be accountable for, customary international law principles and general principles. So there's the thread. So as you're thinking about those sources of law, the treaties and the customary international law principles, also think about these things like, the rules. What specifically are the rules of these treaties, and who has responsibilities, who has rights under these rules? The obligations, rights, and do we have compliance? We've heard already about non-compliance. And enforcement and accountability. If you don't have those, what do you have in the international regime? So actors, I said I would highlight actors because those international law doesn't operate on its own, and there are individuals, there are other non-state actors, there are governments, intergovernmental organizations, and they're all important. They all have rights, obligations, duties. Expectations are surround them. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, governmental bodies, the governments themselves, government officials, and then in the human rights arena, victims and perpetrators. And you can have victims and perpetrators even in a kind of a private commercial environment. For example, as I mentioned, with the different corporations that might subject individuals to unfair labor conditions or deprivations of economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights. And these, the 10 themes of the seminar, they just definitely 100% trigger the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, these goals, I won't go into great detail about them, but they were developed well, they came into being in 2015, made actionable in 2017. They are related to each other. They are about development, how to make the world a better place, to make it sustainable, not for us today, but for the future. What can we do as we try to balance social, economic, environmental concerns? We need creativity, know-how, technology, financial resources to make the world a better place today, but even more so for tomorrow. And there are goals. Some of the goals, it's hard to believe it's 2022 already, and that some of the goals were meant to be met just in 2020. And were they met, and will they be met in 2030, which is right around the corner? 2030 will be here before you know it. Now, we jump back to the Millennium Development Goals, and were they given full effect by 2015? But I guess not. There was a need to have yet another set of goals. And so I'll just flash through those. They're not so different from these, but the 2000 and the Sustainable Development Goals there are more of them. They are more detailed, more focused, and they relate to everything that we're talking about in the seminar this week. With whether the abolition of poverty, zero hunger. Well, poverty, leads to armed conflict. Poverty is the result of armed conflict, and armed conflict war. That's the first item in your list of 10. 10 themes. Zero hunger, that contributes. Health, we've heard about. Quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate change, climate action, life below the water and life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for the goals. So these are the 17 strategic development goals. And if you think for a moment about whatever your topic is for this weekend, and think about how it might relate to some or maybe all of these SDGs. So the themes again for the week. And again, it was so exciting to see all the papers listed out, because it was just a reconfirmation that of the interconnectedness of the themes and how the SDGs relate to them. So here's the first one: war, peace, security. No poverty. I've already explained in my mind how poverty and war and peace kind of relate to each other. Zero hunger, how that it might be kind of related as well. Good health and well-being. If you have armed conflict, you're not going to have good health and well-being, etc. So so that's just the first one. Humanitarian crises. Think about the 17 SDGs and it. So I'll just leave it there for a second for those of you who are focused on humanitarian crises. Think about it. Refugees, again, created by poverty, results thereof. The papers that I saw related to prostitution, trafficking, disputes, the disputed islands in the South China Sea, independent calls for independence. It's just remarkably rich, and human rights, how that's related to everything. This global human rights regime, how you can't escape discussing that when you're discussing any of these. I'm just going to fast forward through them, because I think that the theme is the same. The same 17 SDGs relate to each and every one of the themes of the course, the themes of the seminar. And global terrorism, how that has affected each and every one of us. When you think about, well, what do I need to do in order to get on an airplane today in any country as a result of kind of the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks in the United States. And I wanted to draw particular attention to commercial issues in private international law, because those of us who work in the public international law arena, sometimes we don't think very much about the commercial side, about the trading, the commercial aspects of trade. But as I've mentioned already twice before, it's a very rich subject area. With and definitely on the private side, we have linkages with all of these kind of traditional public international law sides. So as I wrap up, I'll mention that my request is a call to action to mainstream the Sustainable Development Goals into every paper, into every international law journal article that you write or edit, into every court case that you might be a part of. You raise the issues. You don't have to mention strategic development goals, just mention that whatever the activity is that's involved in the suit, triggers some climate issue or another environmental issue, or it contributes to poverty, etc. TV interviews, all aspects of our lives as professionals. Now, I just yesterday I just went online and I pulled out headlines from The Guardian, and I thought, well, how do these headlines relate to the themes of the paper? How do they relate to the strategic development goals? How do they relate to international law? So top item, military drills to begin as Russia ratchets up Ukraine tensions. I don't need to go into detail to explain how that is linked to what we're talking about, and not just the papers that might be talking about territorial integrity or sovereignty, but when we talk about refugees and asylum seekers, or people who are living in Ukraine now who don't want to live there anymore because they have well-founded fear of persecution and they're fleeing across the border before the invasion, or they are being deprived of food or mobility. If there is an invasion, then schools will close. And what about the right to education and the right to participate in democratic institutions if you can't vote because the polls are closed? So if we keep a broad mind about these things, we might see the interconnectedness in a way that's going to be helpful now and for the future. Yes, so that's yesterday. Also yesterday, The Guardian. This morning, just a few minutes ago, the New York Times. Again, U.S. says Russia could invade Ukraine at any time. But on the left, we have Canada Live updates. An injunction to clear the key bridge at U.S. border takes effect. So this is a bridge between the United States and Canada. 2/3 of all trade between U.S. and Canada take place across this bridge, going back and forth. And there were some people who were protesting, I think protesting vaccine mandates, something like that. I don't know exactly who everyone was, but they were expressing their right. They were exercising their right to express themselves, as we do. We're permitted to do both in the United States and Canada and everywhere else in the world. We can protest and wave flags and have rallies, but here the rallies, etc., were taking place in such a manner that trade between the two countries wasn't happening. So the court had stepped in and perhaps did a balance between the rights of free exercise of expression and association, etc., versus the economic rights, the rights to property, the rights related to these to trade, to individual companies that own the materials that are inside lorries or trains that want to go between Canada and the United States, and they can't because someone else is exercising their freedom of expression rights. So international trade, the corporate commercial interests are not something that's wholly separate from kind of traditional economic, social, cultural rights and other things in the strategic development goals. Another one from the Guardian today, more of the same. So the 10 goals: war, peace, security. Around here we have, around the edges we have the themes, in the middle we have the goals. So think about how your theme relates to these, to the Sustainable Development Goals. So war, peace, security, humanitarian crisis, refugees, global human rights regime, self-determination, secession, independence, declarations, environment, maritime law of the sea. It was great to see the one or two papers on the sea. I wasn't expecting that. International recognition, global terrorism, and commercial private international law. So even here we have that listed as number 10. In some senses, as kind of an afterthought, but it's so real, such an important part of what we're talking about. So as I wrap up, truly, the future of our world depends upon you. Mind the SDGs, pay attention to them. What are the greatest threats? We heard from Dr. Sinha about some of these. Climate change. Is it threat of the use of force, actual use of force, by nations, by terrorist groups? General non-compliance with international law. He mentioned, lack of cooperation. Lack of global cooperation and a couple of others, but as I said, the top 10 list is going to be include many of the same. And COVID-19, how can you have any presentation anywhere in the world without talking about that? And so here's how I wrap up. How can the Sustainable Development Goals help make the world a better place today and tomorrow? And what are we all going to do? What are you going to do as you walk away from here and enjoy kind of the fruits of the very, very hard labor that has gone into this seminar this weekend? So thank you very much for permitting me to be a part of this. And I truly look forward to what's coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insight on the various themes and highlighting about the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you again for gracing us with your presence, guidance, and for sharing your words of wisdom.
Well, Professor, thank you so much. And you touched up each and every facets of the international law. I think today, whatever the discussion that is going to take place, I think you have touched up all the aspects, what I noticed. And in addition to that, in your talk, you are eagerly waiting to see the papers of our today's conference. Definitely once we compile it and we are going to share with you and you can have a view. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking out time and joining with us. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you much. And I'm preparing to fly from Bangkok in about 14 hours. So
okay.
If you don't mind, I too will take my leave.
Sure. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I would now like to request Ms. Chandrika Trivatia Raj to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mahin. Respected guests, Professor George E. Edwards, Director, International Human Rights Law, University of Indiana, and Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, Director, Indian Law Institute, our eminent resource persons from various reputed universities, our Associate Dean, Dr. Hitesh Bhatia, and Principal Dr. Sujata Patil, our most valued participants of the conference, our faculty members, and dear students. I, Chandrika Tevatia Raj, on behalf of School of Business and Law, Navrashna University, consider my privilege to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion. We have been fortunate enough to have of this renowned identity from academia, Professor George E. Edwards, Director, International Human Rights Law, Robert H. McKinney School of Law, University of Indiana. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion. We are also thankful to Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, Director, Indian Law Institute, for gracing the inaugural session of our international conference. Thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule and enlightening all of us with your kind words. We also thank our officiating provost, Pratyush Shankar, and registrar, Dr. Sandeep Vasant, who have always encouraged and supported us to conduct this international conference. We are always grateful to Dr. Hitesh Bhatia, Associate Dean from School of Business and Law, for his inspiring mentorship and timeless support. Thank you to our principal, Dr. Sujata Patil, who has helped and supported us at every obstacle. Thank you to both of you. It would not have been possible without you. Thank you to Anand sir, Animesh sir, and Shahid sir for the technical and logistic support that they have extended to us at this inaugural function of the international conference. Thank you to all dear participants with whom the conference would not have happened. We hope to have a fruitful deliberations during the technical sessions. Well, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. It required planning and a bird's eye for detail. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and delegated team. Mr. Naveen Sinha, Ms. Stella Joyce, and Ms. Madhura Thombre, thank you so much for always being there. I cannot thank the student volunteers enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks. Thank you to each and every one of you. You are the pride of this international conference. Once again, I want to state that we are all most grateful to everyone at the conference. We thank you for being with us in this morning, and we look forward to fruitful deliberations at the technical sessions of the conference. Thank you all, and hope you have a great knowledgeable day ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chandrika, for you too. Okay. Well, we can start next.
Thank you, Chandrika ma'am. A big thank you to all the participants for attending the inaugural ceremony. Here, let's take a break, and the technical sessions will start at 11 a.m. sharp. So, which is in a couple of minutes, nine minutes to be exact. So, all the participants are requested to start joining the session by 10:55. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.